Good morning and welcome to day number 2. It's Tuesday morning, and here we are with our second day in Hebrews chapter 4. I am basically line by line preaching through chapter by chapter, week by week, in Truth Seekers, and taking the class of about a dozen or so people that gather in there and taking them through verse by verse, expositionally preaching Hebrews chapters 1 through the end. So I want to urge you to go to Facebook and YouTube and under Vision Church of the Assemblies of God or Vision Church Assembly of God. You'll find us there. If you're watching this video, you found us one of those two places. Go look under Truth Seekers, a subheading, a way that we organize our videos, and look there, and you can hear this a chapter at a time. And then what we're doing is daily, kind of lagging behind. We're going and reconsidering some things kind of as a daily meditation. So after this number of weeks together, we'll all be experts on the book of Hebrews. And if not, we'll certainly find out just how rich and encouraging the scriptures are and how inspired the writer of the book of Hebrews is. We may have to wait until we're in heaven to find out who that writer is, but we do know the Holy Spirit inspired that writer. That's why I refer to the inspired writer of the book of Hebrews. So without any further ado, let's jump in. As we look at meditations in Hebrews, and we look now at verses 3 through 5, chapter 4, verses 3 through 5. Now we who have believed enter that rest, just as God has said. Now, we who have believed, that is an event in the past. This is one of the big issues of once saved, always saved, Calvinism versus Arminianism, and how we look at salvation. When is a person saved? And here's one of the biggest problems we've encountered in our church language, in the English language, and that is we have made synonyms, words that we think mean the same, that do not. I'm reminded of one of my favorite movies of all time, The Princess Bride. And in that movie, there is one fella who is from another country, and he's come to kidnap the princess. And as they're on the boat and he's looking about very paranoid, the two fellows with him will say something, and he'll say, "Inconceivable." They have somebody, he says, there's somebody following us. And he'd say, "Inconceivable." Always, that was his answer all the time, "Inconceivable." And finally, Inigo Montoya says, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." Because Inigo can see a big difference between what the man is saying and what's really going on. Well, I think that's going on theologically. I think we're using the word salvation as a finished event in the past when we're actually meaning born again. Born again. When were you born again? That's a biblical comment, because that's the same as this phrase, we who have believed. Now, what have we believed? We have believed that Jesus is the Son of God, that God has sent him. He is God in flesh, and he has suffered for our sin once and for all, and then has sat down at the right hand of the Father. So now the task is to believe in him. Jesus even uses that phrase, to believe in the one you have sent. So this is the crucial act of faith. This is the critical act of faith, Belief and unbelief in its most crucial and critical form are whether or not you believe in Jesus. Not simply believe he was a man, not simply believe he came to the earth, not simply believe that he was a great teacher, a great prophet, but that you place your faith and confidence in him. You believe in him. You trust him for your salvation. Now, we who have believed, he is including himself. Why? Because the whole context is these are Hebrews who have believed that Jesus is the Messiah. This has made them an endangered class of people. They feel the heat, they feel the pressure. Now we who have believed enter that rest just as God has said. Now notice he has two things going on here. We who have believed enter. He didn't say entered. He says enter. Those who have believed, those who have been born again, enter that rest. They move into it. They move into receivership of that rest. Just as God has said, so I declared an oath in my anger. They shall never enter my rest. So this idea of rest is this idea of entering the promised land in the context of the conquering of Canaan. And in the modern context, in the life of the modern Hebrew that he is speaking to some thousands of years since then, what is he still talking about? He's not talking about, they're in a physical land. They're actually in the land of Israel, many of them. The speaker could also be in the land. They shall never enter my rest. What's he talking about? They're entering into the kingdom that they have seen. Jesus said, except a man is born again, he cannot see the kingdom, he cannot enter the kingdom. We move into a position of entering, but we don't put it in the past tense. Entered. We say enter. We who have been born again enter that kingdom. There's an interesting parallel there to the language of Jesus. I think we're best off putting it into the context of how Jesus phrased it, rather than just some centuries ago theologian. And yet they shall never enter my rest. And yet his works have been finished since the creation of the world. Boy, that's a real time mind bender. We read the account of the creation in the book of Genesis, what he creates on the first through the sixth day, and then it says on the seventh day, God rested from all his work. Well, that's an interesting concept. And here the writer of Hebrews connects to that and says his works have been finished since the creation of the world. In fact, the Lamb was slain before the foundation of the world. Provision for salvation was made before the foundation of the world. So God's work has already been done. His planning and work already been done. Then it was just a matter of unfolding what he had done along the timeline in which we live. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in these words, on the seventh day God rested from all his works. Now, what the word means, all, it means all of his works. And in fact, technically, if you're going to speak within God's time frame, God is at rest. He's not working. God is not doing anything. Not because he's lazy, but because he's already done it. And now the question is whether we are going to join him in that rest. And we do so, how? By faith. And again in the passage above he says, they shall never enter my rest. What a tremendous emphasis. We would do well to notice how frequently he emphasizes very, very stridently, they shall never enter my rest. There's only one way to enter his rest, and that is by faith. And that faith must be placed, that confidence must be placed in only one person, Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah of God, who has come representing the Father as God in human flesh, and we place our faith in him. God has spoken to us through people. He's spoken to us through prophets. He's spoken to us through signs and wonders. And now he is speaking to us. His final word is Jesus. Wow. So, let that soak into your spirit today. Dwell upon that. Let that stir around and see what it stirs up. The Lord bless you in your meditations today. We'll be looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.